Okay, on to the next topic. So when we think about the philanthropy sector and specifically donor confidence, governance plays a key role. In this next session, Good to Give's Chief Technology Officer, Jared Ortlipp, will interview Dan Ussher, founder and managing director of FirmGuard, about why governance is the key to data and information security, and more specifically, why it's vital for corporates to partner with organisations that take information security seriously. Thanks, Jared and Dan. Over to you now.
Thanks, Jo. And thanks, Audette. That was a really tough act to follow. Hopefully, Dan and I can inspire you with security governance. So, look, as Jo mentioned, I'm the CTO at Good to Give, looking after all things product and technology around Good to Give's giving platforms. We all know governance, risk and compliance is really important in the area of information and data security, something that Good to Give invests heavily with. We have our partners and advisors helping us in this space, and that includes Dan from FirmGuard, who's agreed to join in our discussion on why governance is important for data and information security. So Dan, I'll just quickly let you introduce yourself and then we can get into some questions.
Thanks very much, Jared, and a warm welcome to everyone from all over the globe. Love to see a few fellow Kiwis online too. Audette, thank you. And thank you for an amazing and challenging discussion for us all. I think Jo summed it up in saying that, yes, some of those messages were confronting, but truly inspirational, and as Jared said, a very hard act to follow. The discussion on the mobilisation of the corporate sector resonated very strongly with me, having worked for Salesforce for some years and now owning and running my own company. We've actually proudly adopted the 1% pledge from FirmGuard's inception as well. It's something we're very proud of, and it's something that we look very closely to the market and the organisations that we work with, both in customers and our partner channel as well. Delighted to be with you today, Jared. Thank you. Jo, thank you. Thank you for the team from CAFS and also from Good to Give for giving me this opportunity to be here. I've had 25 years in the IT and security industry, specifically focused in sovereignty risk and data security in the past 10 years. And my observations in that, and particularly working in heavily regulated industries, formed some thoughts in my head around how we could consider and view risk in a different way. And this is one of the reasons why I founded FirmGuard. As part of the culture of an organisation, we look to democratise risk and view it in a different way. Should be part of the culture of any organisation, communicating in a language that actually understands and is comprehensible and understood by everyone. Back to you, Jared.
Yeah, look, we've got a few good questions we want to cover in this session. They're very big topics that we're going to talk about. We're only going to be able to cover them briefly, but hopefully we have some time at the end during the Q&A that if there's some questions you want to ask of us, please put them in there. And if we can't cover them in the Q&A, we'll happy to reach out to you after the event and just let us know via the chat. So first question for us, Dan, is why is it important for corporates to take risk and the protection of data and information security seriously and ensure they partner with an organisation that really aligns with that same focus?
It's a really good question, Jared. And let me start by saying that when I talk about governance and information security, for the purpose of this conversation, they are very big questions. I'm going to talk in general terms of governance, risk and compliance, or GRC, as many of us know it. It all comes back to an organisation's culture and approach to risk. And one thing that we tend to find with the organisations we work with is that a lot of them are scared of it. Don't be scared of risk. Don't be scared of putting in place the appropriate governance and procedures and policies in place in your organisation to ensure that you can become better versions of yourselves. Ensure that not only have you taken all necessary and reasonable steps to protect your organisation, but your partners and suppliers aligned to this culture and an acceptable approach is based on your organisation's risk appetite statement. It was actually really interesting today. McKinsey came out with a very, very timely discussion around today's more connected environment, and that organisations must collaborate closely with external partners to reduce their overall risk posture and exposure to information breaches and cybersecurity attacks. And that resonated very strongly with me, and certainly with the organisations we work for in the marketplace.
So Dan, how does that impact the way businesses should be thinking and approaching governance?
Yeah, it's a good question. It does create a conundrum for business. Not only do they now need to secure their own risk and IT environments, while also accounting for the security of third-party elements of these environments, third parties must be made to comply as well. Regulators are starting to put focus on this. Not only are regulators putting focus on this, but organisations are putting focus on this in their contractual obligations and requirements from their partners and from their suppliers. Technically, in contracts and with security that supports the company, supports you as an organisation. But to ensure cooperation whilst providing significant protection and sufficient protection for all sides, you must bring third parties into the inner circle of your security parameters so that they actually understand your posture and can deliver to the extent and the appropriate level that they need to as well. So not only are they being told to bring parties into the inner circle, but they're also being told to scrutinise.
They sound sort of opposing mandates there. How is that going to work?
They sure are. Yeah, on the surface of these two mandates are counterposed, but the short answer is no, they certainly do not need to be, and they certainly shouldn't be treated as counterposed or opposed to each other. The two stances of trust and security do not have to be in opposition. In fact, they're actually most effective when contained in a reciprocal relationship. And that relationship has to be based on honesty, and it has to be based on transparency and openness. And only when you have those environments in place between yourself and your suppliers and any partners that you're working with will you have a truly well-governed organisation that is reflected across both the organisations you're dealing with and yourself and your own organisation. It's critical to your business and in your case, your charity success. But the assessment of their risk posture is also relative to the risk of the engagement and the role that they have with you, in that it is a two-way partnership. We can use some extreme examples in terms of organisations who might hold material information on others versus a supplier who is only looking at office administration or office stationery. Now, are they going to be treated in the same way as both of each other? The answer should be no, and they should be treated accordingly. Make it easy, make it tangible, make it achievable with expectations clear and very, very strong reporting and remediation lines. The barriers to successful partnerships should absolutely be relative to the role that you play with each other.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Look, we might move on to our second question now. So, look, how is strong governance key to providing oversight for an organisation that's distributing funds to the charity, which is very much what the topic of today's session has been about?
Yeah, look, governance is about building trust, and I've already touched on that in the previous answer, and that it's about building trust and openness and transparency internally and externally, and having the appropriate controls, reporting, processes and procedures to deliver not only what's expected to your customers and your partners and your suppliers, but also what's required by them in a regulatory and in the current global market. I think Ortlipp actually touched on some of those obligations that we as corporates have for ourselves and for each other in the last conversation. The conversation resonates whether it's corporate or charity and in whatever environment it is. I mean, as an NFP, you understand the need and the risk of working with other charities and the reporting required to provide transparency and building trust. Everyone wants to give us a very, very strong giving sector, and that governance is going to be key to growing that sector in a collaborative and trusting manner.
So, Dan, what does governance look like when it's working well?
It's obviously different horses for courses, Jared. It's a good question. I think depending on the role that you're playing with the organisations you're dealing with, governance is about having the appropriate oversight, both internally and externally, typically split into three levels, okay? At an internal level, operational, executive and board, each stakeholder having different requirements. And those external stakeholder engagement programs are going to be equally as important, including how you conduct your regular formal reviews, at your board oversight and board reporting as well, so you can make educated and informed decisions about who you're going to work with in the marketplace and how they are going to work with you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And look, something I've always seen is, governance is not there to slow the business down. I kind of see it as it's allowing us to confidently go after what the business or the charity is trying to achieve. So you can see if governance done well is sort of the safety net to allow us to move quickly and be ambitious. So Dan,
Yeah,
look, let's
definitely.
move to our third question, which is, what are some of the things that corporates and charities should consider from their side when they're engaging with a business or provider that's supporting their giving program?
Yeah, this is a long list of things here, Jared. But again, I think it's one of those things you don't want to overcomplicate either. Evidence of a GRC program, a governance risk and compliance program, they're taking that risk and security seriously, and it's part of their culture. It's actually embedded in the way in which they do business. I always like to look at the way in which they engage, both upstream and downstream, and that your risk appetite is clearly understood by them. They're inquisitive and they're actually looking to understand what that exposure to risk should look like for you, and that they actually really want to demonstrate how they're going to work with you and mitigate issues as they arise and be part of that journey with you. We also, there's obviously a litigious and a regulatory requirement here as well, and ensuring that there's an alignment to appropriate and recognised certifications obviously is required, and as I say, as appropriate. Continual improvement being a focus, operational excellence, and the capacity to invest and reinvest in existing and, in your case, emerging technologies. I think referring back to the trust and scrutiny conversation, is that trust and scrutiny shouldn't be in opposition to each other, and they need to be contained in a reciprocal relationship. I said that exact same thing before. Ensuring the relative risk of engaging with external businesses is understood, and a cookie cutter approach is not being taken to measuring their risk as it relates to you as an organisation. So you need to strike that fair balance between assessing your suppliers' risk hygiene in general and not overburdening them with information requests. Is going to be of critical importance to how you strike up that relationship or that partnership with the organisations that you work with.
Great. And outside the government's risk and compliance, what are some of the other things that an organisation should consider with their partners?
I think it's a strong alignment of values. I always like to think that we are working with organisations that we like working with, and we want to be working with, and who align very strongly to our values as an organisation, in the way that we give back, the way that we move forward, the way we invest in our technology. We all like to think of ourselves as experts, but I think also checking that credibility, expertise in the industry, the size and the scale of the organisation. Bigger is not always better, but in some cases it does provide us with the capacity to ensure that we're well protected. In some cases, liquidity is a significant issue. The size and scale is important. The expertise is important. For your particular sector, and particularly in the technology side of things, investment in R&D, quality project and technical delivery, and that is going to be something that organisations will look very strongly at. It's something that I've looked very strongly at when I've looked to invest in technology or take on technology, is that ratio of profitability or revenue to R&D expenditure. And just diving down into the weeds a little bit more, particularly for the technology providers, is making sure that the appropriate system testing and pragmatic stress testing approaches on systems and processes and procedures are in place.
Excellent, thanks, Dan. And look, we're got 5 minutes remaining now, and we might just go to see if there was any questions that have come through on the chat. Let's have a quick look at the chat there. I can see one question we've got here, which is, so Dan, with your experience, can you provide an example of an organisation that's demonstrated really strong risk and what it meant to their business?
Yeah, definitely. I won't name names to protect the innocent, but the examples in almost all cases of organisations that we've worked with has started off ensuring compliance, ensuring strong governance, and putting in place or adhering to the regulatory frameworks and the operational requirements and frameworks that are there in the market to help you become operationally better at what you do. So whilst it started at a place of contractual or regulatory requirement, every organisation that we have worked with has seen risk, seen an enhancement in security, information, cyber data as being a way of better communicating their objectives to market, and also better improving their operational procedures and processes as it relates to their delivery of products or services to the market as well. So, if we look at information security, organisations who've complied with ISO 27001, GDPR, ISM, any one of those, a number of standards, all work together in a different context. And being able to adhere to those frameworks or those standards has been a very, very positive thing. And in most cases, the organisations that we've worked with have either established more business, new business, or other business from it, by embedding trust into their supply chain, into their sales engines.
Yeah, certainly, Dan. I see that as a big thing that Good to Give sees quite regularly now from our corporate clients, is the expectation to be following or having certification against appropriate standards out there, like the ISO certifications. We might have time for just one more question. So have a quick look. So this one's a little bit about third-party risk management. So you talked a bit about that earlier. When it comes to third-party risk management, it's an important aspect in managing an organisation's risk posture. So can you tell us a bit more about what you mean by third-party management and the risk profile side of things?
Absolutely, and I'll keep it very, very short and simple on this response. I don't think we need to go too far, particularly in the last 2 years, to see that the majority of breaches that have made the market in terms of being publicly notified to the market have been made through third parties. The regulators and most contracts that are out there in place in the marketplace right now recognise that most bad actors in this marketplace are looking to get in via third parties or by superfluous means that haven't traditionally been notified or protected in the past. So not only are the regulators looking at this, but also our customers and our suppliers are also considering the impact of how a downstream or upstream supplier or customer could actually impact the operations of our business, because we have interoperability between almost every element of how we go to work today. That's why it's becoming probably one of the biggest focus of most of the regulators out there in the marketplace, and certainly one of the biggest focal points for boards and stakeholders within businesses who are looking after this. Excellent, Dan. And look, thank you very much. If there's any other questions that came through on the chat and we haven't got a chance to get back to you, please make a note on the chat, and Dan and I will do our best to get back to you. But I think we're wrapped up there. So thank you very much, Dan, for your insights. That was really, really helpful, and we're happy to be continuing to work with Firm Guarded as we keep Good to Give strong. So we might pass back over to Joe now, when you're ready. Thanks very much, Jared.
Thank you so much, Jared and Dan. I hope everyone has found this session around governance enlightening and useful. It's certainly something that occupies a lot of Jared's time, and Good to Give takes extremely seriously and underpins how our business operates.